going to look into the future a little bit here on today's episode of Chicago Bears Now. My name is Harrison Graham. Obviously, this is mostly a lost season in terms of wins and losses, but 2024 potential's there, a lot of cap space. So let's take a look at some Bears 2024 free agent targets. Before we get there, let's kind of just take a look at the outlook of what this team is going to have to work with next year. Based on projected salary cap number for the NFL next year, the Bears are going to have 65-ish million, but it's really probably going to be more than that because they can cut and restructure a few contracts. We'll talk about that in a sec. And I think you look at some of the top needs right now. Defensive tackle, I still think you need more edge help after adding Montez Sweat. You definitely need a center, wide receiver to pair with DJ Moore, and obviously very potentially could add a quarterback as well. I think that's probably the draft, but we'll take a look at some free agent options as well. You look at some prime cut candidates to save some money. Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. So Jackson's cap hit is $18.14 million. Cody Whitehair's cap hit is $13.25 million. Now, if you cut both as pre-June 1st cut designations, you would save a combined $21.61 million. If you cut both post-June 1st, you could save $24.4 million, but then some of the money would roll over to the next year. I don't think that's a big enough difference. I think they'd probably be pre-June 1st designations just so you don't have to worry about it beyond next year. But saving over 20 extra million bucks, so quick math, you could have over $85 million in cap space, and that's after already paying Montez Sweat the contract you did. So the point is, the Bears are going to have plenty of money to spend if they decide to do that this offseason. Now, obviously, the first decision you make as a general manager is which of your own free agents do you decide to keep? Obviously, Jaylon Johnson's the big one. Contract negotiations stalled before the trade deadline, which is why he requested a trade. That did not happen. Hopefully, they can come back to the table. Darnell Mooney, we'll see what happens the rest of the season with him. If he plays well, I could see him coming back, but could come down to price. Cairo Santos is a sneaky one. He's been rock solid as your team's kicker. Yannick Ngakoue, do you bring him back? Maybe. Deontay Foreman, I think as a rotation back, I'd like to bring him back if it's cheap enough. Justin Jones, I'd like to upgrade personally. Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, I'd be open to bringing back one of those guys. I know Lewis is old, but if he wants to come back and be your number 3 tight end for another year, he's still a really good blocker. Patrick Scales, the long snapper, who's been around forever, I would expect him to return. And then Equinemius St. Brown, again, if it's a vet minimum deal for it to be your number 5 or 6 receiver, that's perfectly fine with me. So who you re-signing out of the 2 key guys? Jaylon Johnson, Darnell Mooney, or both? Type JJ if you want to prioritize Jaylon Johnson. Type DM if you just want to bring back Darnell Mooney. If you want to bring both back, type B down below. After this YouTube ad break, we're going to take a look at some external free agent targets for the Chicago Bears in 2024. All right, let's start with the edge position here. It's a loaded class. Now, remember, a lot of these guys are going to sign extensions, could get franchise tags, so it's not like they're all going to be available 4 or 5 months from now, but Danielle Hunter, he leads the NFL in sacks this year. He's been fantastic. Now, he'll be 30 years old, so, I don't think that's a guy you're probably giving a 5-year deal to, but could you overpay on like a 3-year deal to pair with Montez Sweat? That's pretty intriguing to me. Keep him in the NFC North, something to monitor. And I believe, I'd have to double check, I don't think he can be franchise tagged. I think that was part of the restructuring for his 1-year deal this year. I'm about 90% confident on that. I'll have to double check. Brian Burns, now, he's a prime franchise tag candidate with Carolina. I don't think the Panthers are just going to let him loose, but as of now, he is expected to be a free agent because his contract runs out. Now, Brian Burns obviously did not play on Thursday Night Football as he's been dealing with a concussion, but very talented young rusher, so keep his name in mind. Very similar is Josh Allen. No, not the Bills quarterback, the Jags pass rusher who's had a nice young career with Jacksonville. He could be a tag candidate as well, extension candidate for the Jags, but they have a lot of decisions to make on some key players, so we'll see what Jacksonville ends up doing. But these 3 players in particular are proven pass rushers over multiple seasons. Like they're not guys who have been flash in the pans. They've been around for a few years, but they're all still young, especially Burns and Allen. But even Hunter at 30, that's not too old. He doesn't look like a young player either, so keep that in mind. couple other younger guys who have been a little more hit and miss in their career have dealt with injuries. Chase Young, who's now with the 49ers, obviously. Josh Uche with the Patriots, who had a big breakout season last year. Chase Young has bounced back nicely from injury this year. So, obviously, he played with Montez Sweat. Could you bring him in here and pair him with him? Maybe. Uche, more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, but I think he could convert to a 4-3 as well. And the point is that the Bears are dead last in sacks in the NFL since the start of last season, a.k.a. the start of the Matt Eberflus era. I think every difference is different. Not every defense, is predicated on just sack numbers, but this team also doesn't get a lot of pressure either. You've got to get more pressure regardless of the sack numbers, so adding 1-2 of these guys would certainly help go a long way. Now, subscribe to the channel for daily Chicago Bears news, rumors, more videos like looking ahead to the offseason. We've been pumping out some mock drafts as well. Hit that sub button if you want more Bears content. Okay, let's go take a look at the center position now. There's 3 guys I'm looking at in particular that are set to be free agents. Connor Williams with the Dolphins. Now, there's one flaw to his game. Every once in a while, has a bad snap. Now, I know that gives you PTSD watching Cody Whitehair and Lucas Patrick. The difference is A, he's younger, B, he's a much better blocker than either of those 2 players. So I would be willing to live with an occasional bad snap with Williams just because he's a far superior player overall, but that is a frustrating part of his game. Andre James with the Raiders, who a couple of years ago kind of just got a chance with Vegas. He was the backup, starter got hurt. And he's become a really solid young player. PFF has him graded pretty nicely overall as well. I would definitely be open to him. More on the cheaper end than Connor Williams, but someone to monitor this offseason. Before we get to our next center here, I do want to get to today's sponsor. That is Game Time, the best ticketing app on the planet. If you went to Thursday Night Football at Soldier Field against the Panthers, I hope you bought your tickets with the Game Time app, because buying tickets with Game Time, it's easy. It's painless. Not like other apps, which are very stressful and tricky to navigate. Game Time keeps it very, very simple. The next time the Bears are at home is when they play the Detroit Lions here in a few weeks. So if you want to go to that game, check out Game Time right now. Whether you're going to a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, whatever the case may be, Game Time wants your ticketing purchase experience to be easy. They want to give you the best price available, and that's why their promise to you is if you find a ticket on a different app in the same row that you're looking at for cheaper, they'll give you 110% credit of that price, and you'll get a cheaper deal with Game Time. So here's what I want you to do. Download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and plug in the promo code BEARSCHAT. That's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, last-minute tickets for the lowest price available. Got to use our promo code BEARSCHAT to get started today. I use Game Time all the time when I'm going to events. You guys should too. Okay, one more here. Lloyd Cushenberry III out for the Denver Broncos. Still, I think he's 24, 25 years old, very young still. Had a slow start to his career out of LSU. He has center guard flexibility. He's also graded out nicely per PFF, has not given up a sack this year. I think only has 1 penalty. And the bottom line is, and we've talked about it all season, really multiple years here on this channel, the Bears must upgrade at center. Lucas Patrick's PFF grade this year, 44.1. Cody Whitehair, 45.1. Both of them can't snap the football either. So it's not just that they don't block well. They don't snap well. It's just not good enough. It's got to be a priority for Ryan Poles this offseason. Obviously, the draft is going to have a few options. Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia, a player we've talked about on our mock drafts in the past. You got to figure it out. You've got to upgrade the center position. Now, how should they upgrade at center? If it's you, are you doing it through the draft or in free agency? Type D for draft or F for free agency. I don't really care how you do it, where you do it, just do it, which is something you didn't do last year. Okay, wide receiver. I got to tell you, this edge and wide receiver group is pretty deep. Now, again, a lot of these guys are going to get tagged, extended, etc., but I bet a couple of them slip through the cracks. T. Higgins with the Bengals. Cincinnati has to figure out what they're doing contractually, because obviously they got to pay Jamar Chase. They paid Joe Burrow. He feels like a prime tag candidate, but who knows? Weirder things have happened. Mike Evans, he's on the wrong side of 30 now. They could be 31 next season. There's a chance Tampa just lets him walk, and Yeah, it would cost a lot, but maybe you overpay on a 2-year deal. Maybe you go like 2 for 55 or something like that. Pair him with DJ Moore. Now, again, I'm all in on Marvin Harrison Jr., but some of these free agents are very intriguing. Calvin Ridley with the Jags. He started out hot this year. It's been up and down since. I wonder what a number looks like for Ridley this offseason. Obviously, he was off that year and a half, whatever it was, where he took some time off, then the gambling probe, still only 28 years old. I don't know if he can be that true dominant number one, but you don't necessarily need that when you have DJ Moore. Marquise Brown, I think, is a perfect complementary receiver. He's been much better this year catching the football. He's got elite speed, can stretch the field, has had a nice season with the Cardinals. He's set to be available. Michael Pittman, who operates the slot really well. If you do decide to move on from Darnell Mooney, I think Pittman could potentially be an upgrade. Different type of receiver. He's got more size, not as blazing speed as Darnell does, but he can really work those intermediate routes at a very, very high level. Some other notable guys. This is a deep group right here. Tyler Boyd with the Bengals. He's a great number 3. Again, if Mooney signs elsewhere, Boyd would be a vet replacement. That would be pretty solid there. Gabe Davis with Buffalo. How do they view him? He's been a number 2 next to Stephon Diggs. His highs have been very high. His lows haven't been great. A little inconsistent there, but he's still a young, promising player. KJ Osborne, he's a good number 3. He's not a 1 or a 2 or anything like that, but I don't think he'd cost that much. He knows the division. Josh Reynolds in Detroit's been pretty damn solid. I think as a number 3, I like him a lot. Kendrick Bourne, same deal. Now, he's coming off that torn ACL he suffered a few weeks ago, but, those last 2 or 3 guys there, maybe more in the bargain bin range, single digits in terms of millions per year, but you could certainly do a whole lot worse. Let's go back to the defensive side of the football now. Defensive tackle, Chris Jones. I'm keeping an eye on this Chris Jones situation because, remember, he held out, didn't play the opener against Detroit. They ultimately gave him a pay raise for this year, but just a 1-year contract, so we could be playing this saga all over again. Now, he can get franchise tagged. He did not work it out where he could eliminate that, so Kansas City still has control, but I'm keeping an eye on that situation. Ryan Poles was in that front office. You got to think he's got strong feelings about Chris Jones, so we'll see what happens there. Leonard Williams with the Seattle Seahawks obviously got traded over from the Giants. His production's dipped in recent years, but he's made a couple of impactful plays with Seattle. I'll be curious to see what his market is. He's like 29 now, so I don't think you're giving him a 4 or 5 year deal, but he's out there. Christian Wilkins, this is someone I'm monitoring because I think there's a real chance he hits free agency. He's having a nice year this year with 5 sacks for Miami. He could play either a defensive tackle spot in a 4-3 scheme, and the last couple of seasons in particular, he's played a lot better, so I'm intrigued with him. Justin Matabuke, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Draft pick out of Texas A&M a few years ago, 3rd rounder. Hadn't done much, and then this year he leads all defensive tackles with 7.5 sacks. And just kind of out of nowhere. His overall pressures isn't like jumping off the page, but if you want to pay less on a younger guy than a guy like Chris Jones or Christian Wilkins, Matabike could be a pretty intriguing option. DJ Reader, I'm not super interested. He'll be 30 next year, I believe. He's a little bit older. His production hasn't been as good this year, but he's a vet. He may not cost a crazy amount, so keep that in mind as well. As we know, Ryan Poles, he's very diligent in who he gives his money to. The Bears need an interior disruptor. There's no doubt about it. And what's made this whole Eberflus era so frustrating is, look, I'm not defending Flus at all. I don't think he's a great coach. But he has said since day one, this style of defense, the engine to it is a 3-tech defensive tackle. And you know what they've done? They've signed Justin Jones, and they tried to make Javon Dexter work. Well, Javon Dexter is a rookie who has a lot of flaws in his game. He's got great athleticism, but he's a developmental guy. So it's just going to be weird if they move on from Flus and they never even gave him an adequate 3-tech, but that's the way things go sometimes. Quarterbacks, I mentioned obviously the Bears are going to be heavily linked to quarterbacks this offseason. I think more so in the draft and free agency, but Kirk Cousins coming off that torn Achilles. We'll see what happens. I think him going back to Minnesota is still pretty likely. Ryan Tannehill has been benched for Will Levis. I'm not that interested there. Baker Mayfield's played okay this year. He's been up and down, but I don't view him or Brissett or Minshew. These are like stopgap options, and to me, if I'm looking at this Bears quarterback situation, the week 1 starter next year is either Justin Fields or someone in the draft. You don't need a stopgap guy. I think Tyson Bagent has shown enough where he can be your backup if you decide to move on from Justin Fields. So I don't need to pay Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, someone like that, $8 to $10 million per year. I've got a cheap backup in Tyson Bagent, and then ultimately I make a decision on Fields after the season, and if I move on, I draft Drake May or Caleb Williams. So it's kind of as simple as that. Who will the Bears starting quarterback be in 2024? Obviously, the wild card is if you don't get a top 2 pick, then, to me, I'd rather run it back than sign someone like Baker or Tannehill. I'm not that interested there. So let me know who you believe will be the week 1 starting quarterback for the Bears next season. All right, guys, appreciate you for tuning in to today's show. Hope you guys have had or have a fantastic weekend here. Bears Now, daily content. Hit that sub button. We'll see you soon.